It's time to get all set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics with your hosts, Scott Williams and Jeff Traylor.
When I hear the coffee brewing, I think, what the heck we doing? Because I got barely any sleep last night. As the diaper bag I pack with Hot Wheels dollies and some snacks, I say a prayer there'll be a seat in the crime room this time. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.
Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass. My name is Scott Williams. My co-host is Jeff Traylor. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Scott.
How are you?
I'm great, man.
You look great.
Oh, thanks.
You been working out?
No.
All right.
Just overeating. I look, I define the word girth according to our guest.
Are we going to keep visiting this?
You sent
I'm
a
sorry.
plant in here.
I'm sorry if I hit a sensitive spot. It's just such a large spot to hit.
from our skinny guest over here.
Hi, Father McCarthy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing good. Thanks. Now you're here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here. I always have a fun time when I'm here.
What, so you had Italian Fest recently. This is a while ago.
A couple months ago, yeah.
Has anything big happened between then and now other than the National Eucharistic Congress?
I mean, we were off-site hosts for the National Eucharistic Congress, so
Mhm.
we had a lot going on.
I think you told me that you were expecting 3,000 people. Did you get 3,000 for
We got-
the Latin Mass?
I said we could have up to 3,000. We got, I think, 1,700 for the Latin Mass.
That's awesome.
For one or
For one.
nice.
And then the next day we had about 900, I think.
That's
Nice.
amazing.
Yeah.
So in a church that seats 350, crammed them in there.
Good.
What?
Fire marshal, no, don't watch this.
What did you do about priests distributing communion out in the sun? How did you distinguish where they were? Keep the sun off of them.
Catholic Concepts provided beautiful umbrellas for us.
Oh, wow.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
They were actually really nice umbrellas. I don't know how you or what you found for an umbrella, but they're really nice.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they-
we do
they
high
look
quality
beautiful.
stuff, Father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
we
it-
were.
I think it was actually 4 Marks Printing that technically provided them.
Yes, but they did. They said Catholic concepts on them.
Okay.
Because nothing is a more Catholic concept than the Eucharist.
That's true.
So
I would agree.
trademark pending. I'm just kidding.
The Eucharist.
No, no,
You're going to
no, no.
trademark Eucharist.
Other people do that. All right, great. Should we stop bantering and get into the show?
We should.
All right.
Otherwise, we're going to hear about it.
All right.
Yeah.
Father Christian, tune in now. Go ahead.
We should start marking that,
Yes.
like in the
Timestamp.
outline of the show, like X number of minutes in, like the outline just says Father Christian, you can start here. It doesn't even say the show's starting.
He doesn't like the banter.
No. He says, he's
Lucky-
like, I listen to you guys. I don't listen to like the banter at the beginning or at the end. I just like to focus on like the main part.
That's very, very pious of him.
Yes.
Yes. Benedictines. Am I right?
Or maybe it's utilitarian. Maybe he's just taking advantage of us.
Maybe.
Hmm.
That's, yeah. Share your thoughts in the show notes, everybody. You go ahead and comment and tell us in the comments. Tell us if
We do
you
the show
think.
notes.
Sure. No, we don't.
We allegedly do.
We allegedly do. We talk about them a lot. All right. Are we ready to get going here?
Yeah, that's where
2
we'll put
minutes
the
ago?
timestamp.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, Father.
Sure.
No, I meant Father Christian.
Oh, thanks.
You talk.
2 minute drill. It is the 21st Sunday in ordinary time. We're excited. I'm excited. I mean, we're still just rolling through some Bread of Life action here, and
Yeah.
it's very exciting.
It's the end.
I know. Spoiler.
Oh, sorry.
So our first reading comes from Joshua, chapter 24. So Joshua gathers all the tribes of Israel and calls the elders, leaders, judges, and officials to present themselves before God. He does call them at, I was not going to pronounce it, but this is a good opportunity
try.
for me to get something wrong. I know you love when I try to pronounce things. He gathers them at Shechem.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're going to go with that.
No, that's pretty solid.
Thank you. He begins by recounting their history, reminding them that long ago their ancestors, including Abraham, lived beyond the Euphrates and they served other gods. And he challenges the people to choose who they are going to serve, whether the gods whether the gods of their ancestors or the Lord. And the people respond that they will serve the Lord because he brought them out of Egypt, protected them throughout their journey and all the nations they encountered. And they declared that they will serve the Lord their God who drove out the inhabitants of the land before them. So
I've always used the word Lord and God like synonymous to one another. Is it different?
They are technically different, but
Stay tuned. We'll talk more about that.
Okay.
yeah, we'll make a note here.
Yeah.
Our second reading comes from Ephesians. It's either 21 to 32 or
Whoa.
chapter 5, 21 to 32.
What about the
Or
Psalm?
the response. I'm sorry. I know. I was so excited too. Our response psalm this week. 3 weeks in a row.
3 weeks
The
in a row.
ultimate banger to end all bangers. 3 weeks in a row. Taste and see the goodness of the Lord.
Let's go.
It's been I've paid attention to the fact that I've heard 2 different versions of Taste and See over the last
Could you give us
2
a
weeks.
rendition of those?
Huh?
How do they go?
Taste and see the goodness of the Lord.
Wow, I've not heard that one.
No one has. And you'll never hear it again because he couldn't do it again if he wanted. But Scott's singing version of anything on the show is always a unique experience.
I was once in a barbershop quartet.
Just once.
That was never in it.
Oh.
That was a fib.
That was a fit.
Your voice isn't horrible.
When I was a
I think
freshman in high
there's some
school,
potential there.
I was the most improved vocalist for the men's all of the choirs at Center Grove High School.
Really? Most
Mhm.
improved.
Yeah.
Is that when you peaked?
Well, we called the class Advanced Euchre.
Ooh, nice.
It was
I would take that class.
it was a good class.
Advanced euchre.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's impressive. You were in an advanced course as a freshman.
We would need a fourth to display like last year, but
Yes.
maybe you should try that one sometime.
I'm in.
All right, you need to talk about the scriptures.
Thanks. So taste and see the goodness of the Lord. Our second reading though, Ephesians chapter 5. We get an option here. Normally I'd ask you which option you want, but it's just a long form, short form. So I'm going to cover the whole thing. But a reading that many people would know and recognize, a popular wedding reading. But Paul starts out by talking to his believers and about how they should submit to one another out of reverence for God.
Paul speaking to whom?
The Ephesians.
Thanks.
He advises wives to submit to their husbands as to the Lord, explaining that the husband is the head of the wife, like Christ is the head of the church. Then instructs husband to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleanse her by washing through with water through the word. He emphasizes husbands should love their wives as their own bodies, nurturing, caring for them, just as Christ does for the church. And then he highlights the unity between the husband and wife, quoting that the two will become one flesh. He explains this unity as a profound mystery, relating it to Christ, the church, and urging husbands and wives to reflect on this relationship. So, popular reading, but sometimes I feel like people's brains don't make it past like the first line of that reading. And so I want to make sure and cover it all. I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Then we have our gospel. Surprise, we're in John. John chapter 6, 60 to 69. Many of Jesus's disciples who were listening said, This saying is hard. Who can accept it? Since Jesus knew that his disciples were murmuring about this, he said to them, Does this shock you? What if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? If it is the spirit that it is the spirit that gives life, while the flesh is of no avail. The words I've spoken to you are spirit and life. But there are some of you who do not believe. Jesus knew from the beginning the ones who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And he said, For this reason, I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by my Father. As a result of this, many of the disciples returned to their former way of life and no longer accompanied him. Jesus then said to the 12, Do you also want to leave? Simon Peter answered him, Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and are convinced that you are the Holy One of God.
All right.
Yeah.
What a good set of readings.
Right?
Yeah. Father McCarthy, did Jeff get anything wrong?
No, I don't think. get anything wrong.
Okay.
I think it was all. I think it was all on
major?
target. No,
Great.
seemed good.
Yeah, thanks.
Well done. I mean,
Well,
stuttered a couple times, but I would too.
See, you said well done, and I was like really taken back there because you complimented me, but there you were. You capped it off
I mean,
as much as our relationship.
Girth.
Girth. It was girthy reading.
There was a lot there.
There
was
were
a
long
lot
readings.
there.
There were long readings.
Yeah.
The breadth and width of the readings were smaller.
Oh goodness. All right. What do you preach on this weekend, Father?
So I'm probably going to go a little sideways on this.
Ooh. Okay.
And
All right.
I'm going to preach on hard teachings of the church, teachings that we find difficult or hard to accept, because in the gospel, it's the teaching on the Eucharist, which a lot of Catholics, obviously, we did the whole National Eucharistic Revival thing. So,
Shows off his coffee mug.
Most of it.
most of it.
Yeah.
Most of it. Because a lot of Catholics struggle with this teaching, but then there's also the teaching on marriage, and a lot of people just cringe and do not like the idea that marriage there's a hierarchy in marriage according to St. Paul
Mhm.
in most of the Old Testament and the vast majority of Christian tradition, and they kind of cringe at the idea that there could be some sort of inequality in marriage, and even the teaching in Joshua is how, I mean, if you know the backstory and the front story, yes, we will follow the Lord, but no, they haven't, and no, they won't.
Yeah.
So talk about hard teaching and what makes hard teachings easier to accept is that you're accepting them not based on the teaching itself, but upon the person who's teaching, which is Jesus. Like that you'll believe things that people you trust, people you know, people you love. And if you're in a loving, trusting, loving relationship with the Lord, it's much easier to believe the hard teachings that are kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, and hard teachings are kind of your specialty, right? Like you have what's your doctoral work in?
Moral theology.
Yeah. And like I think a lot of people would say that like moral theology is the category which like a lot of the really hard pieces that people struggle with in the church.
It covers more than that, obviously.
Yeah.
But the ones that people come to you for are the ones that are hard. That
Yeah.
They have a hard time accepting.
Yeah. And I would say as much as you and I give each other a hard time and have been friends for a long time, the place that you have impacted my life the most is when you've been able to help teach me and talk to me about the hard teachings of the church, like the impact, the things that just as I was discerning and like as a young person trying to understand these things, like, yeah. And then I've watched you do it for others as well. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've gone to confession. I was telling Jeff this earlier. When you go to confession to Father McCarthy, you leave learning that you had more sins than you walked into.
But that's a good thing. You say that in a good way.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Hopefully you leave with the knowledge that you have fewer sins than you walked in with.
Like
You had more
had,
sins.
yeah. Yeah, you leave with
with zero,
Yeah.
but hopefully
but you make sure that we cover them all, which is phenomenal.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a different style of hearing confession than some. I mean, I steal it all from Alphonse Liguori and Francis de Sales and others, but the idea is,
Good mentors.
yeah, they're all right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not my original idea, but the idea is that you help people have conversion in life, and that confession is a place where people come to confession because they want the love of God, which is expressed when you're a sinner as mercy, but they want to be embraced in the love of the Father. And you want to go to the Father and say, hey, like I screwed this up. But sometimes you screw stuff up and you don't understand why you screwed it up. And if all this Father says is, yeah, you did, don't do that again, but doesn't help you understand how not to do that, doesn't give you tools, it feels wrong to me. So I try to understand where
Yeah.
and how people, I'm not gonna have a big line for confession, why people are sinning, so I can help them keep from sinning again.
Yeah.
Break the patterns.
You guys want to do one here? Just
Live.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I think the Holy See would be upset about that one. Father McCarthy started podcasting his confessions. And everyone,
That would get a lot of
technically everyone who listened to it would be bound by the seal.
We our numbers go through the roof all day.
call it sealed. We're not
Bound.
all right. You mentioned that there's these couple of hard teachings, what do we need to learn about this week? What do we need to, what are the common things that might be misconceptions or hard?
So I think the thing I'm going to try to emphasize is you go to the hard teachings of the church, you go to the hard teachings from our Lord, because there's really no distinction there. I mean, you go to those hard teachings and you go in faith. St. Anselm says that theology is faith seeking understanding. So you just presume this teaching is correct, not this teaching is outdated or wrong or misunderstood. This teaching is correct. How can I understand this teaching better, and how can I understand the teacher better? Not, I don't like this teaching because it says something that is going to make me change my life in some way that I don't want it changed.
Yeah.
Which is how, I mean, all of us tend to go because of the fall. Like, I hear something I don't want to hear. I'm like, I can find I'm a very good moral theologian. I can find my way out of that. Like, I'm sure I can find a loophole there. Like, there's some loophole. Love your neighbor. I'm looking over and going like, maybe no one love this one. There's a loophole that love your neighbor thing.
He's not actually a neighbor. He lives down the street a little more.
Yes,
so.
I mean, neighbor. I mean, you can just repeat the question, but Lord, who is my neighbor? There was a man. So just asking people to wrestle with those hard questions, because I think all of us as Catholics have different teachings. I mean, there's ones that are more well known, marriage and the indissolubility of marriage, contraception, beginning of life stuff, end of life stuff. All those are kind of well known out there, but there are lots of teachings where people are just, they're a little uncomfortable with the teaching.
Yeah.
And
we're uncomfortable with defending it.
Yeah. Both.
I think there's the other side of that is like, I'm okay accepting it, but man, is it hard to know the right words to defend it in, a social setting.
Yeah. And explain why this is true.
Right.
But I also come back. I think if you look at the whole girth of the church's teachings, I think everyone finds teachings that are just a little hard to accept. It may not be the obvious ones.
Yeah.
But there's always a teaching that kind of touches on a nerve, because we all struggle with pride and selfishness, and something struggles. And you're like, oh, he's the rich young man, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to give up that to follow the Lord.
Yeah. I feel like those are sometimes once you learn those teachings and you dig more in for yourself and you learn the beauty and the truth behind those teachings, I mean, that can also help you double down on the faith in general. Like,
I agree. It draws you closer to Christ.
Yeah. I think, obviously evangelization is a huge part of what we do as a church. But for me, like on my journey, the times that I can remember like growing closest to God and what I would call like reversion light. I don't know what the right words are. Like after college, it was
ongoing conversion.
Yeah. Was learning these things for myself and not just being told it, like going and discovering what the church's teachings are and the beauty behind them, and being able to like actually own them now that I fully understand them in a way that I hadn't before, just because it felt more like a fence than it was, a safety net.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the hardest and largest crises, I don't know, of faith for myself are the things that have strengthened and shaped my faith the most, whether that is like moral issues that like in a leadership role. And when I was in campus ministry, being encountered with these like large moral issues and things that were beyond just a student coming and asking about this. And like, I not remotely extremely well-versed, but I have a theology degree. Right. And like, I have some understanding. Talking to one person about that's one thing. Talking to a community, talking to the internet, to social media, to, like, is a much bigger. But those things have like very much that diving in and understanding and learning at depth has strengthened my own faith and shaped my family, I think, because of it.
Yeah.
Because of like knowing that I believed this anyway, but now I very much more understand it and I'm strengthened in it. And I know that my call is to help other people know and learn this as well, because that's what's going to get them to heaven. And that's the other piece. Those have been the moments that have really helped me, are the moments like, it's not about I'm right, you're wrong, and I know why I'm right. It's about like, no, there's an incredible joy and like sense of relief and escape here when you know that this is true.
Yeah.
And you understand that because that's your pathway forward. That's your path to heaven.
I can't remember who said this, but somebody once said that, it's most of the people wouldn't have an argument of the teachings of the Catholic Church if they actually knew what the church taught.
Bolton Sheen.
Yeah.
You said
That guy. Yeah.
Nobody disagrees with the Catholic Church actually teaches, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both we're butchering it. God bless Fulton Sheen. May his cause move forward soon.
No, I think before we started here, Father we were talking about the phrase agree to disagree, which, like, if you're talking tough topics, like, and it struck me because I remember watching a comment section of a Facebook post one time devolve into this like big Catholic moral theology argument. And the person who had put the post up had no interest in,
It's a dangerous place to be.
Yep. And I was just watching, and I was engaged in what was going on. And the person who put the argument up was, taking an anti-Catholic approach and frustrated. And then somebody started challenging them on it with like truth and intelligence, and their response was, well, agree to disagree. And this person came back at them and said, no, we're not going to do that, because like for you to say that, you're saying that because you don't want to discuss this anymore and you don't want to learn. But to agree to disagree is to understand each other fully and completely, and then say you're okay with that. And it's not, and that's not what you're trying to do. And I was so struck by it. I reached out to this person. I had never met this person. He was a Protestant pastor in North Carolina, and I reached out through Facebook Messenger to just tell him like how much I appreciated reading this, and we kind of built a like small friendship out of it because we could discuss this. But anyway, it just
did you send him a National Eucharistic Revival mug?
I did not. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but every once in a while I would reach out and just check in on him. But yeah, maybe I should. I got to dig into my Facebook messages now through all my Facebook Marketplace comments.
Is this still available?
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, I think I was just struck by you saying that and remembering that conversation and watching that happen, because that is where people default to. Well, let's agree to disagree. No, like, to agree to disagree is to just say, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And if that's what you want to say, just say that. But yeah.
Father, this weekend, are you going to dig into one of these hard topics? Or are you just going to say, like, let's deal with hard topics?
I haven't quite decided. There's a hard topic that keeps coming up that I'm contemplating throwing down on. But I'm always hesitant because there's not unanimity amongst Catholic moral theologians or Catholic theologians in general about the particular teaching, although I feel strongly about it. So I don't like to present something that's not like, I like what I present in the church to be very tight and neat.
That's
not
fair.
open-ended.
Not open for discussion, but I mean, I feel strongly that all those others are wrong. So I also don't like to take advantage of the pulpit as a bully pulpit for myself. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of debating whether it's prudent to speak out about it or whether I should just
That's fair.
I
leave it
respect
on an
that,
individual basis. So
we're on a tough topic ground. Father Patrick Hyde was talking last week with us he preached about receiving on the tongue, and that he started encouraging his congregation and the students to be receiving on the tongue, and which, like, I wouldn't call controversial, but like it's not the common experience in the church right now. But I don't know. Do you feel like coming out of the Eucharistic Congress and like the energy from there, do you feel like more emboldened to have these conversations, or
about communion on the tongue?
No, about just like tough topics and like diving into this, coming out of an experience like that?
I mean, I have probably a less optimistic view. As I watch the world crumble, I increasingly realize there's nothing to lose. Like, you might as well preach the truth. There's nothing to lose. The world desperately wants and needs it, but it keeps clinging to false truths.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well put the truth out there and say the true things, and hopefully, I mean, in charity and love.
Yeah.
But the absurdities that are going on in the world these days, you just kind of shake your head and you're like, yeah, there's the agree to disagree. I mean, Benedict XVI pointed out in a Regensburg address, and they took a lot of heat for it. That at some point in time, things become so crazy in one direction that you no longer have the language to carry on a dialogue. Like you can't agree to disagree because you can't even speak the same language. And our society and culture, we're going down pretty far down that way. And then I think the only way to overcome that is to preach the truth in great love and allow people to see the beauty of the truth itself rather than even kind of enter into the debate. Just say, you know what, that's not true. This is true and this is why. And sometimes there's no dialogue. You can't dialogue with, I mean, yeah, that would seem paternalistic, but I'm going to say it anyways and probably take heat for it. So many of us, myself at times included, so many of us, and certainly the world right now, on the level of faith and knowledge of faith, they're less than 2-year-olds. Like their actual knowledge of the scripture of reading the Bible, like almost zero. They've heard a few Bible stories, but even then they're usually just stories about the stories, not the stories themselves. And you don't get into a debate, discussion, or negotiation with a 2-year-old. You just have to tell them why this thing is good and they need to do it. And then, I mean, they either do it, and I mean, obviously, if the 2-year-old's your 2-year-old, and if they don't do it, there's consequences for the 2-year-old. But you can't debate with the 2-year-old why the 2-year-old needs to go to bed. Like, you don't explain to the 2-year-old the benefits of bedtime. Like, you have to understand if you don't get a proper REM cycle.
You should try that, Scott.
Yeah. Well, it might bore your child to sleep.
Playing through this scenario in my head.
No, you.
So at some point in time, all you can say is, this is beautiful. And this is why we do this thing, because it's beautiful. And if you want that truth and that beauty, it is available to you. And if you want to engage on this, you're welcome to engage. I can't speak your language anymore because that language you're speaking is Babel.
Yeah, no cap.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, and like, and I'll pray for you. That's tough to get up there and do, and like you said, but I respect that, and I know, and I do know that you do it in charity and love. Like I said, I've heard you preach that. I've heard you do it. You save up all the charity and love that would normally go towards me, and you use it for others. And and obviously I need a lot because of girth, but
and one of the, like, I think one of the greatest things that you can do as a pastor is preach that. What about us? What about like the people in the pews? What is the greatest thing that we can do to tip the needle in the right direction to get our culture back on track after Mass on Sunday through the rest of the week?
I would say the model for the modern Christian to bring about conversions is Mother Teresa. I mean, the way in which she herself was transformed by love and then loved so immensely and with such joy that people couldn't resist her, like, because they saw the joy and the love of Christ in her life. I mean, today is the patronal feast day of the Missionaries of Charity. So, little shout out to the Missionaries of Charity. I'm sure you're not watching nowhere. But
I don't know.
And then September,
leave it in the comments if you're a missionary at charity.
September 5th is the feast day of Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa of Calcutta. And she just loved with such immense joy that she could bring about the conversion of people who were beyond conversion. And people experience and talk about how beautiful Mother Teresa was. Take a look at Mother Teresa. She's Yoda. I mean, she was like, she was not a pretty woman from a physical perspective. Like, she looked like Yoda. She was like 4 foot tall. I got to meet her one time in person, kind of in passing. I mean, she was very tiny. She was totally wrinkled, totally burned up by the sun. You know, like, she looked like she was 900 and something years old. But people experienced her as beautiful. Well, the beauty they experienced was obviously not physical beauty. It was the beauty that the Lord worked in her life by the grace that was in her life and by the joy that she shared with others and loving them. And she never backed off any of the truths. She never backed off any of the truths. She would shut down a convent before she would break down. And she did shut down convents before she would back off the truth. And I mean, because she said, we're going to do this in truth, but we're also going to bring about the conversion of souls and not even by trying to convert them, simply loving them.
Yeah.
She did ordinary thing in extraordinary ways.
Yeah, extraordinary love.
I think I was just interviewed on another podcast, and I was talking about like
Stepping out on our podcast, are you now?
yeah. But we were talking about like
Does that ring on your left hand mean nothing?
He wears
their
this
podcast
all set
ring.
for Sunday ring on his right
Yeah.
hand, but okay.
For
the other podcast.
But I think one of the greatest things that the world needs is Catholic business leaders. Like we spend the majority of our lives in a workplace, right? And you can develop all sorts of habits. You can learn, like you're influenced by the people that you're around, and if there are more people that are living out their Catholic faith in their everyday work, I mean, that could be business leaders, it could be anybody that works in a business culture, but I don't think that people know how to go to work and live out Catholic values or Christian values in general.
And just to be clear, you're saying business leaders who are authentically Catholic.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a Catholic business.
No, it could be,
yeah.
It could be like a Fortune 500 company that has a leader that's Catholic. I mean, I think of like the person that owned Domino's was like things like that. But like those types of things trickle down in the way that you treat people, the way that they live out their lives. But I think that would then go home and influence your family life as well. But take a Mother Teresa approach to the 8 hours, the 9 hours, the 10, 12 hours a day that people spend at work, and how much could that convert the world? I could be wrong. I don't know.
If
Can't hurt.
If you're loving Jesus and loving others, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Yeah.
All right. Dumb questions.
Yeah, I'm ready. Are you
Go
ready,
ahead.
Fowler?
I feel like I'm surrounded by them already.
Wow. First off, I'll start off with a real good one. I sketched this out during our podcast our podcast that we'll never make of live confessions on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's called Bound or Loosed. And so you let the listeners decide. They guess, and then at the end they find out.
This is like a modern gladiators.
Yes.
Not repentant. Bound.
We missed this at the beginning, but you've started your new job, right?
I have.
As director of spiritual formation.
Director
Did I get
of
it right?
spiritual formation.
I nailed it.
Spiritual director at the
Bishop Simon Brute Seminary. Yes. And you moved in. You're living in the frat.
I live both places.
Okay.
So
you bilocate?
I may have. I'm not aware of it if I have. I feel like I am.
I'll bet.
But no, it's a lot of back and forth. It'll be probably more at the seminary as the year goes on. And it hedges and ebbs and flows. I mean,
But how's it going so far? Are you enjoying it?
Seems like a really solid group of guys, and yeah, I'd say it's great. I'm enjoying it.
Good. Like I also want, like, in my mind, I want priests that are in the seminary who like really enjoy getting to be there and do that. Like nobody should feel burdened by that role. Like that's what's going to help form, I think, good priests of the future. So
I mean, I try not to walk through the hallways with you guys.
With us?
No, I mean with the seminarians. No, I Catholic concepts. Of course, I do that here. But
no. You also, like I said, so you're living in both places, but you moved in the seminary.
Kind of.
How?
I mean, I'm settling in.
Yeah.
It's a process.
How are your digs?
They're okay.
Yeah. Father Peter was sharing with us that he
commercial.
Oh, really? What do you mean?
I mean, it feels very much like an institutional room.
What it was.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Live like Mother Teresa. You're in a
yes.
Yeah. You're in a cell.
I mean, the sari would look good on me.
Can we do that?
Halloween. No, we can't do that. I can ask the sisters. Okay. I'm sure they won't know me one.
Oh, and you're gonna ask? He's gonna ask. All right. All right. That's all I got for today. We had a really good podcast. I don't want to trample on it anymore. Yeah. Right. No, thank you, Father. It's always a joy.
Oh, truly. Joy. It's really joy.
Oh, that's the last thing I'll tell you. I was just pitching another priest on joining our guests on the podcast. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to hang him out to dry on the podcast if he decides not to. But in doing so, I was explaining to him, like, it's It's not that hard. Like it's, and I was like, and I think like we have a lot of guys who come back and do this and they enjoy it. He was like, well, who else is on it? And I started listening priests, and I said, Father McCarthy, and he goes, oh, well, if he'll do it multiple times, then I think anyone will.
Anyone can. If he can do it, anyone can.
I think it's the respect of
Mike
knowing
really
that
likes it.
if you did it once and you didn't like it, you would not be back. And so, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Father.
Thanks, Father.
It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.